Welcome back to the 7-minute therapy session. My name is Seth Needing, and today we're going to be covering the change process, but we're going to be talking about how do we change our behavior. In previous videos, we've talked about two fundamental principles in the change process. One is that it's always a two-step process. We have to throw off that which we wish to change, and we have to put on the antidote and practice that. The second foundational principle is that there's a dominoes or a chain link that affect each other. The way we think impacts the way we feel, which impacts the way we behave, which impacts our behavioral patterns or habits, which impacts our character or personality, which impacts our journey through life, and eventually our destiny of where we end up. So if you think about that chain link, and we can have an analysis of looking at if we want to change the end outcome of our behavior, let's say, we can intervene at the thought level. We can intervene and break up the pattern at the feeling level. We can intervene and break up the pattern at the behavioral level. So today we're going to talk about not only how we take our thoughts captive, how we change our emotions and how we feel and not being emotionally led, but how we change our behavior. So last time we talked about the spectrum of anxiety, and again we'll go back to anxiety, and we'll talk specifically about a specific fear or phobia of driving. I've had clients who have come in who have either been in an automobile accident or because of other stressors in their life, their anxiety tends to get attached to a specific phobia, such as driving their automobile over a bridge. So in looking at that, one of the very effective techniques for dealing with a specific phobia is called radical acceptance and commitment therapy. In other words, a person may never totally lose their anxiety or their fears, but despite those fears, it doesn't mean that they have to give up that behavior. So I had a client, we'll call him Jim, who came to me, and his first phone call to the office was that he could not leave his home. He was very fearful of driving. He was able to walk a couple of blocks, but essentially he had the phobia of driving. So I asked him if he could get there, if his spouse would bring him, and he said he could. So his spouse drove him to the first therapy session. And then I gave him a series of progressive exposures, immersion eventually, and saturation into driving. But it starts with very small incremental steps. So his first step was to simply visualize himself driving, which created a certain level of anxiety. But the more he was able to visualize that, the more his anxiety went down. Then I had him sit in a car in the driveway and not drive anywhere. And he was able to do that for a while until his anxiety lessened. Then I had him drive up and down his driveway. And he was able to accomplish that. Then I had him get in the car while he was driving, his wife beside him in the passenger side, and drive up the block and around the block and back. And he was able, at first with a high level of anxiety, but he eventually became less anxious about doing that. Then I had him go out onto the highway, again with his wife sitting beside him, and he was able to drive on the highway. And then I was able to have him drive to the office with his wife accompanying him, but he was the driver. And then the next thing that caused him a certain amount of anxiety was to be able to drive alone. So had him drive the car around the block with his wife in her car, following him around the block. And he was able to do that and then progressively to drive on the highway. So it's called a progressive exposure, gradually exposing oneself to what the fear is. And then eventually, by immersion and saturation, the person becomes desensitized to their anxiety. I had a gal who came and was fearful she hadn't been in an auto accident, but because of other stressors in her life, her anxiety got attached to driving over a bridge, in which she got very fearful, and she had to go over this large, long bridge to get to work. So we developed a treatment plan, a behavior of having her drive. It was 4 lanes over the bridge, drive on the inside lane, don't look over the edge, follow closely behind another car, focus on the car ahead of her, think about the car ahead of her, perhaps even studying the car's license plate. And by doing these things, she was able to keep practicing, and she became desensitized. So again, if we want to reduce our anxieties, our fears, our phobias from a spiritual realm, if we immerse ourselves in biblical studies, if we immerse ourselves in our prayer life, if we immerse ourselves in doing daily devotionals, if we immerse ourselves in conversations with other mature Christians, then we can begin to think in terms of the spiritual realm. Last time I gave you the example of getting caught in a storm over Hawaii, and at that time that I had done that, I happened to be in Bible college, so I was fully immersed in homework and thinking about reading, studying, and processing the Bible, as well as praying and doing devotionals. So again, that would be a practice that we could develop. And if we practice that, pretty soon I think we'll notice that our lenses in life change from seeing the world with fear and timidity to putting on our spiritual lenses and feeling more trust, more secure, more grounded, because we have a relationship with God. And so again, I want to thank you for tuning in today to the 7-minute therapy session. And if this series is helpful to you and you know of anybody else that's suffering from anxiety or specific phobias, perhaps you could share this video with them. And also my book that's out free on the internet, biblicaltherapyseth.com is the website. The name of the book is Biblical Therapy, Your Personal Journal. Wishing you positive mental health and many blessings.